Hey y'all, Max here, and it's been a while, so welcome back. Past few months have been really busy with work. I didn't stop collecting, but I just didn't really have the time to make videos. I made an Instagram account for game collecting somewhere in that time span, so I was using that as an outlet to post little stories about games, monthly reviews of stuff that I got, and I got quite a few things this month, so I decided I'd make a video and return to that style of me just talking for a really long time about a lot of different games. So let's dive right into it. Before I get specifically into games, I gave Pokemon card collecting another try. With the new Scarlet and Violet games coming out, I said, you know, it's maybe a good time to get back into card collecting. So what I did, me and my sister opened up a booster box of the new Scarlet and Violet set, and we just got a couple cards. Set's not done, but we're gonna see about collecting that set or just moving on to the next set. I think it's called Paldea Evolved, and it comes out I think next week. So maybe we get another booster box, maybe we try and finish this set. But it was cool to just get Pokemon cards again. It's been a while. The curse is even extended a little further as I started maybe collecting a few Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm not paying a lot for these. I refuse to do that because I already have one expensive hobby, but you know, sometimes cool things are cool. And I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards growing up, so a few cards here and there won't kill me. Among other non-specific video games that I got, one thing that I got was an Ape Escape DVD. So the Ape Escape DVD is a collection of 2-minute shorts. Frederator, back in the late 2000s, got the rights to produce shorts based on Ape Escape 2, which, if you know me, or if you've seen the post on Instagram, or you know anything about me, I love Ape Escape 2. So they made a bunch of shorts. They appeared on Nickelodeon, on Nicktoons, and that's kind of what it was. It's this was a UK only DVD release, so you can't watch it on just any DVD player. But I gave them a shot, and they're just kind of silly 2-minute shorts. It was kind of fun to watch. The entire runtime of the entire DVD was like 48 minutes, so there was like maybe 20 shorts, maybe, you know, somewhere around there. So it was kind of cool to see, you know, Ape Escape in a different medium than just video games, especially since I'm such a big fan of it. There are other series about Ape Escape that I don't know if there are DVDs for it, but I found that one on eBay and had to do it. Otherwise, not specifically games that I bought, but like I was just saying with Yu-Gi-Oh, that, you know, I played the Yu-Gi-Oh games growing up. I collected the cards, and a lot of the games back in the day came with collectible cards. So Eternal Duel Soul is probably one of my 2 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh games of all time. If it's not this one, then it's the next one that I'm about to show. But each game came with collectible cards that were not exclusively released on the game, because you can get the cards in other sets otherwise. But Eternal Duel Soul specifically came with Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Skull Dice. And I decided that I would want to complete my Eternal Duel Soul game. I originally had it just loose, so this month I got the box, got the manual, and I got the collectible cards to go along with it. In that same fashion, I also completed the Duelist of the Roses. I had this game complete with everything except the cards, and these cards I remember very vividly because I remember putting them in decks that I had played with growing up, and it's they are Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, the Magnet Warriors, which they don't really appear that frequently in the game. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Skull Dice in Eternal Duel Soul don't pop up that much. Only Skull Dice. I think one duelist actually uses Skull Dice with any level of frequency. And same thing with the Magnet Warriors. They don't use them all that frequently, but it's still cool to have the promo cards. The last one, this game I didn't have growing up. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! The False-Bound Kingdom. It's the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Game released on GameCube. And I also completed those cards. Zoa, Metal Zoa, and Goblin Fan. So even though it wasn't so much a video game that I bought, as much as I bought the cards to complete the games, I still think it's cool because it's a nice little piece of history and gives me a reason to buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I guess. So that's it for the non-games, but let's get into the actual games that I bought. As we did, over the summer when I did these videos a long time ago, we'll start from the most recent systems and work our way back. So starting with the most recent system that I bought for, Dokapon Kingdom Connect. Also, if you know me, Also, if you've seen my Instagram posts. Also, if you've seen me ever talk about video games ever, I've probably talking about Dokapon Kingdom. Dokapon Kingdom, I have incredibly fond memories of playing it with my friends. One of my friends got it for his birthday. Dokapon Kingdom on the Wii came out, I think, in 2008, so it might have been like 2010. We were, in middle school, and his parents came home with Dokapon Kingdom for the Wii. We played it, had a grand old time, and the love kind of started there, and I have since collected at least one version of every game that has ever been released on the Dokapon series. Most of them were released only in Japan, but a couple of them came to North America, like Dokapon Kingdom, Dokapon Journey, and Dokapon Monster Hunter. So Dokapon Kingdom Connect is, if nothing else, a port of Dokapon Kingdom for the Wii and PS2. So I was super stoked when they announced this, because now I can play Dokapon Kingdom anywhere, not just on the Wii, not just on the PS2, and it allows online functionality so I can play with friends. And I have already done that, at least a little bit. If I have any complaints about this, it's that it wasn't really so much a ground-up remake as it is just a port. So there are some silly little things that I think could have been done better, but if nothing else, I'm playing a lot of it. So if there's any game I'm playing right now, it's this one. Moving farther back, the other thing I also talk about a little bit for each system is that whether or not a system is region-free or what its region locks are. Because a lot of the games I bought here today are Japanese games. Not that we've seen a lot of Japanese games already, but that was Dokapon Kingdom Connect was one of the very few games that was NTSC, or one of my North American releases for the month. A lot of the stuff, everything I'm holding in my hand right now, is a Japanese release, so bear with me. The Switch, not region locked. You can play Switch games from any region on any type of Switch. So you can play an American Switch game, obviously, on an American Switch, but you could have also played it on a Japanese Switch, or I could have gotten the Japanese game and played that on an American Switch. Okay, now moving farther back, next system we have games for is the DS. So the DS is not region locked either. You can play Japanese DS games on an American DS, and that's exactly what I have here. So, first game is Mumentani no Okorimono. If you've never seen this series before, I don't really blame you. So, Moomin, the Moomins, is a media series that originated in 1945 as a book series and eventually made its way to TV and to film. The reason I know about Moomin is because I had a friend from many years ago who was from Finland, who she grew up watching the Moomins, and this was like a big part of her childhood. So during collecting and when I started branching out to other regions of games, I found out that this was a thing. Specifically, I found out that there was a Game Boy Color game called Moomin's Tale that would have matched up with a game she would have played growing up. Whether or not she actually did, I don't know. But it made me say, you know what? As a way to kind of have her friendship with me at all times, I wanted to get the Moomin games. So there are 4 Moomin games in total released on the major systems. There's 1 game released on the Sega Pico. If you don't know what that is, I don't really blame you. I don't blame you either. 3 games were released in the PAL region. 1 game was released exclusively in Japan. This was the Japan exclusive one. They're all kind of expensive, if I'm being honest. So I would love to get the Game Boy Color game, just because that was the first Moomin game released on video game systems. And at some point I'll get the other 2 DS games that were released in Europe only. Moving forward, we have Pokemon card game, How to Play DS. One of the very few region-exclusive, Japan-exclusive Pokemon games. This specific one was released in 2011 during the black and white era of Pokemon, and it was released with the beginning set, which was just a TCG set that taught you how to play the game. And that's exactly what the DS game does. It has a library of cards that teaches you how to play the game. Obviously, the game has evolved a little bit since 2011, but nonetheless, it's a good way to learn how to play the game. Specifically, the beginning set I thought was interesting because there was the beginning set, there was the beginning set for girls, there was the beginning set plus, and the beginning set Pikachu version, which were all Japan-exclusive TCG sets or TCG packs, if you will. And this game specifically was bundled with the beginning set in 2011. Beginning set was released in 2010 initially, and then it was repackaged to include the game with it in 2011, which is cool. Of course, I love Pokemon, so anything Pokemon-related kind of cures the itch. Otherwise, the last 2 games for DS are The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks and The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. If you're watching this video and you know anything about me, you know I've never played a Legend of Zelda game. And it would be really hard for me to start playing a Legend of Zelda game that is in Japanese. But these were a really good deal, so I got them, and somebody's going to get mad at me for that. Pretty cool. One kind of funny thing is that when I was looking at games to buy and I saw this one, I sent it to a friend saying, "Ha, should I buy this?" And she was like, "Yeah, you should." I go, "You're a bad influence." Because then I ended up buying it. So that's just kind of funny. Moving forward, we're going to go back to the GameCube. Oh, no, not GameCube yet. No, yeah, we're going to move back to the GameCube. Okay, I have things a little bit out of order over here. Only one thing released on GameCube in Japan. It is Donkey Konga 1 and 2, a bundle set. So this thing is humongous. I have no idea how much of the screen this is taking up right now. But Donkey Konga is a rhythm game that was released in both America and Japan. We got both Donkey Konga 1 and 2. And Japan got Donkey Konga 3. So Donkey Konga has these bongos included. When I originally bought this, I thought I was getting two separate games, two separate boxes, that I would get a box for Donkey Konga 1 and Donkey Konga 2. And I kind of did. So if you open this up, as soon as you open it, at the very top is just a copy of Donkey Konga 2. But on the inside is the original box that Donkey Konga 1 came in. So you get Donkey Konga 1 and 2, but not two separate bundles. It's just they took a Donkey Konga 1 box, repackaged it, threw in a second game, and then put this box on the outside. So I did get two boxes, but two boxes that fit into each other. So it's really cool. It's kind of silly. It's humongous. So now if I ever want to play Donkey Kong in Japanese, I can, because now I have two bongos. I bought a bongo set not that long ago, and now I have a whole separate one because of this big old bundle. And that was it for GameCube, just that. I don't know if we ever got a bundle like that specifically. We might have gotten like a Donkey Konga 1 and 2 bundle. I realized I did not look that up before making this video. But still cool. I think it's kind of silly. Donkey Kong, love Donkey Kong anyway. And again, it's just silly. Okay, well now moving further back. Also GameCube is region locked, so you wouldn't be able to play Japanese GameCube games. But thankfully, even though that's a Japanese GameCube game, I have a Japanese GameCube, so I'm in good shape. Moving backwards to the Game Boy Advance, a system I loved growing up. We have a few games. The first one is Mario Tennis Power Tour. I believe this is one of only two North American games that I have in this video. This is the last Mario Tennis game that I was missing. So this might come back in the near future if I ever get the courage to make another video about Mario Tennis. But now I have all of them. The other the other four are Japanese games. Game Boy Advance is not region locked, so you can play Japanese Game Boy Advance games on an American Game Boy. So we have a few here. The first one, which was kind of silly, is, forgive me for reading straight from a screen, but it is Bo 9 Kiwami Senshi Yago Yugo. And this maybe looks familiar to some people because when I bought it, it looked really, really, really familiar. How I remember it was an anime that I'm pretty sure appeared on Cartoon Network at some point in the past. It had to, that's the only way I would have saw it. Or maybe on like 4Kids. But it originally started as a manga in 2001 and became an anime in 2003. And I seem to remember seeing it on Cartoon Network, or maybe on like a VHS release of like a Yu-Gi-Oh episode or something. So I've seen it before. I don't remember where it was. It's silly. If you look up anything about Bo, if that name wasn't silly enough, you'll get the idea. So that's just kind of cool to come across. The next two are Kaite Denju Telefang, and we have two of them. We have the power version and the speed version. So I don't know when I originally came across these because I had come across them at some point in the past, but I don't remember when. And when I did, I thought I remember reading that these games can interact with real-world items, kind of like another series that's going to appear very soon, but I thought that's what they were capable of doing, that things that you did in the real world would affect gameplay in the actual game. When I was doing a little bit of research just for this video, I couldn't find anything about that. So I really have no idea where that idea came from. One thing I did see when I was researching is that these games were bootlegged and sold as Pokemon Diamond and another Pokemon game to American audiences. So if you didn't know what you were buying, almost 20 years ago, you might have gotten one of these games as Pokemon Diamond on the Game Boy Advance. Has nothing to do with the Pokemon Diamond that was released on DS. So kind of a cool little piece of history, also kind of silly, but it's kind of neat to have 2 more games that came as a set. Last but not least for the GBA is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2, which this specific game is exclusive to Japan, but it was later fixed up and resold as Yu-Gi-Oh! Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Duel for worldwide audiences. So I think I might have Yu-Gi-Oh! Worldwide Edition, which would just be a cleaned up version of this game. But specifically, this game is based on the Season 2 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, which was the Battle City arc. So I remember watching Battle City growing up. Not that I knew that when I was buying this. If you don't get the idea by now, I just kind of buy Yu-Gi-Oh! Games because I liked Yu-Gi-Oh! Growing up. But it was still cool to get kind of an exclusive game. It's kind of interesting that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games in Japan also had numbers. So I think I have 5 through 8 now. So it's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 5, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 6, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 7, and so on. So this is number 6. And I think I'm almost done with all of them. But still pretty cool. Moving farther back, we have PS2 games. PS2 is region locked, so you can't play Japanese PS2 games on an American PS2, but I believe it was either in April or maybe March that I bought a Japanese PS2. There was an American seller that had one. It wasn't in the prettiest of shapes, but it worked. It didn't come with any wires, but of course I have the wires. And I was able to play some Japanese PS2 games. I had a bunch from when I bought a ton over the summer, and now I actually have the opportunity to play them. So the first 2 I'm going to show kind of goes back to what I was saying before about Dokapon Kingdom Connect, but it is Dokapon Kingdom. So, like I said, love Dokapon Kingdom, and I try to collect at least one version of every game that was ever released for the Dokapon series. So we got Dokapon Kingdom in America, and I had that version, but I said, I also want to get the Japanese versions because it's for the sake of completing. So I now have 2 Japanese versions. You notice the boxes are a little different. This one is kind of like the Best series, specifically Sting the Best. Sting was one of the developers on Dokapon Kingdom, which was published by Atlas. So we have the regular release, and then we have like a budget kind of release for people to buy it more affordably and get more access to wider audiences. So that's cool. I didn't know this one existed, but this one was incredibly cheap. Not as expensive as the American release, but still kind of pricey. But now I have multiple copies. It's kind of funny. Price charting isn't great for Japanese games, just because it doesn't always take into account the right game, or it takes into account weird shipping costs. So price charting doesn't have the original release on it, but price charting has the best version, and it says this game is worth $999. It is absolutely not, but it was kind of funny to see that when I was adding it to price charting. Okay, last PS2 game. It's a game that when I bought it in English, I bought it because I liked the board game. So I said, let me give this a try. And when I actually tried the American release, I loved it. And it's a game that I'll just randomly play over and over again, just for like a couple days on end. So the game is Monopoly Party. This is the Japanese release. This is Monopoly Mazase Taifugo Jensei, and it's just Monopoly Party. When I gave it a shot testing it, it didn't quite match up 1-to-1 with Monopoly Party, so there's obviously some region differences, but it's still really cool to have. Monopoly Party is a rare game that not rare in rarity, it's one of the few games that I bought as an adult and played as an adult and really enjoyed, and we'll keep going back to. For the most part, I keep going back to games that I bought or that I played in the past, as you could see before. So, just kind of cool to get 2 regions of the same game. There's also a GameCube release. At some point, I would like to get the GameCube release for Monopoly Party in Japanese as well. Okay, moving farther back, we are going to go to the Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color, like the Game Boy Advance, is not region locked. So, let me just get some stuff out of the way. So we got a couple things for Game Boy Color. Where do we start? we'll start with this one. So I mentioned before when I was talking about Kaite Denju Telefang. Also, that Kaite Denju Telefang translates to mobile beast telephone, something really silly like that. But I mentioned that I thought that there were games that would interact with real-world items, and that didn't really happen. But I know for a fact this series does. So this is Robopon. Robopon is, as it maybe sounds to some of you, very similar to the Pokemon series. You catch robots and you use them to battle. Robopon kind of died out because of the popularity of Pokemon. Pokemon kind of drowned them out. But the concept is similar. So I have Robopon Sun and Robopon Star. Obviously this one's complete. Little weird shout out. I got these game protectors for Japanese Game Boy Color games from retroprotection.com. Strongly recommend. They have a ton of different case types. So these keep the games nice and safe, of course. So, but regarding these two, they do interact with real-world items, specifically like house appliances, kind of like a VCR remote would. That's why they have this humongous panel at the top. This is the size of a regular Game Boy Color game. This is the size of a Robopon cart. So really cool that it has that ability to interact with real-world items. Robopon did come to the US. There was one American release for Game Boy Color, I believe, and then we got 2 of the Game Boy Advance releases. There were 4 Game Boy Color releases, though, however. I have Sun and Star here. There's also Robopon Moon version, and there's also Robopon Comic Bomb Bomb. I don't know what that is, but it seems like a thing that happens in Japan. If anybody has any info about that, please let me know. But still really cool. I find it really interesting. Kind of the historical significance, how it could have rivaled Pokemon had it really exploded at the time. But also just the idea that it can interact with the real world, I think is super duper interesting. So that's cool. The next one is Yu-Gi-Oh! Let me get the correct name. Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule GB. Part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise is Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters. If you've ever seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Before, you've probably seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, not Capsule Monsters. It was just kind of a spin-off to the franchise that appears sometimes in the anime, but also a lot of times in the manga. And this was a Japan-exclusive game that revolved around Capsule Monsters, but also had elements of Duel Monsters in it too. As a Japanese-exclusive Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, had to get it. But it's still cool, still a neat little piece of history for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. The last game for Game Boy Color, which if I didn't say it already, I might have said it already, but Game Boy Color is not region locked. You can play any Game Boy Color game on any Game Boy Color. The last one is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4, the Joey version. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 was split up into 3 versions. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelist was split up into the Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey versions. And these, I don't even remember when I came across these. I think they might have randomly appeared in some lots that I bought over the summer for Japanese games. And when I found out that there was a trio of them, the only one I was missing was the Joey version. And for some reason, I couldn't find the Joey version anywhere. That's where eBay comes in. So came across this one. It now completes the series, which is really cool. The whole trio is really neat because what happens is there's 900 cards available between all 3 games. And each specific game only has access to a certain number of those 900 cards. So you don't really play the same game any given time if you're playing one of the 3 cartridges. Also, however, you get access to one of the Egyptian God cards, which if you've seen Season 2 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, you know what I'm talking about. Obelisk, Slifer, and Ra. And you can get access to one of the cards in one of the games, but it's not usable in that game. It would be usable to trade to another one of the games. So, for example, Kaiba version doesn't have access to Obelisk, but if you were to get Obelisk in one of the 2 other games and trade it to this version, then you can use it. So the interconnectedness of these 3 games is really intense and really neat, and I think it's really cool to now have all 3 in the series. So that's it for Game Boy Color. Moving farther back a little bit is the N64. N64 is region locked, but the only thing that region locks them is the tray that is on the inside of the N64. Basically, it doesn't physically fit in an N64 if you try to play games from other regions. But if you change out the tray where the games go into, then you are able to play games from any series you wanted to. And I'm sorry, any region you wanted to. So one is Magical Tetris Challenge, which is, believe it or not, it's Tetris. Specifically with the Disney theme. There are some other modes, but the combination of it being Disney, combination of it being Tetris, had to get it. So that's cool. We did get that game here in North America, but it was pretty cheap buying it in Japanese. So why not? The other one, I accidentally bought a duplicate, but I'm going to show it again anyway. It's a Tamagotchi 64. So Tamagotchi, if you remember, was those tiny little pocket games where you had to literally take care of a little pet named, or under the species Tamagotchi, if you will. So that kind of spawned a little franchise of its own. There are some games, I have a bunch of them on the original Game Boy. We got a few of them here in North America. This game we did not get. This is a party game released on the Nintendo 64 where it's kind of like a Mario Party, but Tamagotchi themed, of course. So it's kind of cool. I bought a duplicate, but I gave the duplicate to a friend. But it's still something I bought this month, so I wanted to add it. And Tamagotchi's pretty neat, so why not? One more game for the N64. This one is a game that I saw during a video gaming trip with some friends. We went to a specific store. I saw this and I go, I know exactly what that is because I recognize the box type. And I asked how much it was, and it was really expensive. So, not saying that they were overpriced. I was able to get it for a really good deal on eBay, so that's why I got it. It is Star Fox 64. So, Star Fox, if you are familiar with the Star Fox series, it's a space series that Nintendo had. Started as Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. During some research when I was buying this game, I found out Star Fox had a couple different names in a couple different regions. So Star Fox in American and Japanese, but in Europe, Star Fox started as Star Wing, and on the N64 it became the Lilat Wars, which is really cool. I'd like to get those at some point. But Star Fox 64, this box specifically is one I wanted because it's big. So not only does it come with Star Fox 64, so it comes with Star Fox 64, the complete game, but it also has a transfer pack on the inside. Rumble pack, not transfer pack, Rumble pack. So it comes with a Rumble pack to give your game a little bit more quality, a little more energy. So that's really cool, and just the big box release is really neat, I think. So really cool to have finally come across this. Okay, moving farther back, we have a PlayStation 1 game. I don't collect a whole lot of Sony games, right? You saw before. I had a bunch of PS2 games. PS2 would be the one exception because I loved my PS2 growing up. But PS1, not so much. I don't really have good memories of the PS1. But when I saw this one, I had to get it. So I love Beavis and Butthead. If you can't tell, I maybe look like Beavis sometimes. I kind of act like Beavis sometimes too. But this game was released on PC in North America, but it never got a console release, except in Japan. So this is Beavis and Butthead in Virtual Stupidity. It's a Beavis and Butthead adventure game, released on PlayStation 1. I had to do it. Love Beavis and Butthead. I haven't watched the new series yet because I think it's on a streaming service that I don't have access to at the moment, but I've also been told it's not very good. But love Beavis and Butthead. I have the complete series somewhere on DVD, so maybe I'll watch that later tonight. PS1 is also region locked, but thankfully I have a Japanese PS1, so I was able to experience it. Moving backwards, we're going to the Super Famicom. Super Famicom was released in North America as the Super Nintendo, and the games are region locked by a physical barrier, kind of like the N64 was, but even easier than changing the tray for the N64. The Super Nintendo just has little tabs on the inside of the cartridge port that you can literally snap off. If you snap them off, you're able to play games from any region, and that's what I did. That doesn't mean I didn't buy a Super Famicom, because I did. But some more games for the Super Famicom. First one is Bijou Tuyaju. If you don't know what that is, it says right here, The Beauty and the Beast, the Disney game. Love Disney, kind of like I was saying with Magical Tetris Challenge. And this was just a cool little game to get for the Super Famicom, a Beauty and the Beast game. I have the Beauty and the Beast game on Super Nintendo. I think the only Disney game I'm missing on the Super Nintendo is the Snow White game. At some point I'll get that, but Beauty and the Beast, I watched the remake last year, like last Black Friday, and I actually loved it. So when I went back and watched the original Beauty and the Beast, fell in love with it all over again, even though I watched it as a kid. When you have a different appreciation for, ew, Disney princesses, gross, the movies are really good, and the music is fantastic in the Beauty and the Beast. So I'm really glad to have gotten this too. Next one, inspired kind of by I'll go with pop culture icon it is in the Nintendo scene. I'm not the biggest fan of the series, but I have friends that are. Specifically, one friend, as soon as I got this game and another one I'll show off later, as soon as I had to send it to him, saying, look what I got. This one is, let me get the correct name. It is Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem for Super Famicom. We never got this game. The Fire Emblem games, a lot of them are really, really expensive here in North America, and this was an exclusive one to Japan. I was able to find it for pretty cheap, so I thought it was cool. So yeah, Fire Emblem. The last one for the Super Famicom is a game that I had bought and loose before, but I found a really good deal on it complete, so I got it. It is Kunio-kun Dodgeball. So the Kunio-kun series branches out in a couple different places. It starts as like an action beat-em-up kind of game. There's an RPG element to some of the other games, but a lot of the games are dodgeball based. So at some point in the past, I mentioned that I collect the handball games because handball is a really neat sport that deserves way more love than it does here in North America. But those are all released in Europe only, so that's kind of how I forced myself to import the handball games. Dodgeball is another one. Dodgeball, we did not have a lot of dodgeball games here in North America. We got Super Dodgeball on the NES, we got Super Dodgeball Brawlers on the DS, and some other games in the middle, but a lot of those dodgeball games are actually just localizations of the Kunio-kun series. Specifically, Super Dodgeball is a Kunio-kun dodgeball game. Super Dodgeball Brawlers is a Kunio-kun dodgeball game. So this one, I just love the idea of playing dodgeball. So it's just kind of cool. But really cool to get this one complete now. Moving farther back, we are getting near the end. Super Famicom was kind of a long time ago. It's 30 years ago. The last system I have a ton of games for is the Famicom. So Super Famicom became the Super Nintendo. The Famicom is the original Nintendo, or the NES, that was released here in North America. I did not have a very big Famicom collection prior to even just this year. And when I got a Famicom, I decided I could start buying games for the Famicom. And so I did. So, lots of Famicom games here. It's the most I have for any specific system in this video. So I'll try and go through them kind of quick. So the first one is Mother, the original Mother. You may not know Mother, but you know Mother 2. You know Mother 2 is Earthbound. That was released on the Super Nintendo. So the original game, the prequel, is Mother. I got it without a manual, but it's still really cool. Still a really good deal. And now I can play pre-Earthbound. I believe Earthbound Beginnings, or whatever its prequel title is in English, was released on the Switch Online feature that you could play the prequel to Earthbound as, I think it was Earthbound Zero. I think that might be what it's called, but it's still cool. Actually, one thing I did forget, pre-Famicom, or right after the Famicom, but in backwards chronology, is the Famicom Disk System. So the Famicom Disk System was an add-on to the original Famicom, only in Japan, released in 1986, but because it wasn't really that useful, it was discontinued in 1990 as cartridge capability got stronger and stronger. So I got a Famicom Disk System game because I didn't have one before. Got this one really cheap. It's just ice hockey. I think the idea of an ice hockey game in Japan is really interesting because ice hockey is a lot more popular here and in Canada than it is almost anywhere else in the world, but especially so in Japan. So to have an ice hockey game that is Japanese, I think is super interesting. I have a Famicom Disk System. It doesn't work, so I gotta get it fixed before I play the game, but still cool that I now can say I have a Famicom Disk System game. Okay, back to Famicom. So, quite a few. We have Banana. If you know me, if you know how goofy I can be sometimes, Banana is just kind of funny. And when I tried playing it, I knew it was a puzzle game, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So when I looked up as to what I was supposed to be doing, what I found was that it is a puzzle game where you're supposed to save, you play as a mole, and you're supposed to save the mole's daughter-in-law. And in the process, you're supposed to collect fruit. Banana is just one of those fruits, and specifically bananas give you a bunch of different capabilities. I had a really hard time figuring out what was going on because it kind of represented like Dig Dug, where you kind of go up, down, and around, making different paths, but you weren't able to backtrack. So like if you went down, you couldn't go back up. So I was really confused and I didn't know what I was doing. But pink cartridge, titled Banana, with the premise of saving the mole's daughter, is just really, really silly. Okay, another one is Booby Kids. So spare your judgment for just a moment. Booby Kids started as an arcade game in Japan, and it was ported to the Famicom as Booby Kids. And the whole premise is that you play as characters that are able to create booby traps, like right in front of them. So when I tried playing it, what I was doing was literally just opening up little portals to nowhere to put enemies into, which was just kind of silly. So that was kind of funny. It did end up releasing, there did end up being a similar Game Boy game called Booby Boys. Also funny, I'm not even going to lie. I mentioned Dig Dug before, and so we have Dig Dug for the Famicom. In North America, we did not get Dig Dug on the NES. We got Dig Dug as an arcade game, but we never got it as an NES game or as a home console game, at least when it was initially released. But Japan did. I really like Dig Dug as an arcade game, so it was cool to get this Japan exclusive one just to be able to play Dig Dug on a home console. I believe, oh, you know what, I shouldn't say that, because I think the first home release of it was on the Atari 2600, and that I do have. So it might have been the first time it would have appeared on Nintendo systems, but we didn't get Dig Dug on the NES. Next is Donkey Kong Jr. Math. If I didn't make it clear earlier, I love Donkey Kong. Monkeys are really funny. Bananas are really funny, if you haven't seen just some of the few things I showed today. And if you know me well enough at all, you know that I can do math. So Donkey Kong Jr. Math, it's an arcade-like game where you have to make a number based on different numbers. So for example, Donkey Kong Jr. might be holding up, or sorry, the number you might be going for is like 56, and there's a bunch of numbers scattered around a whole bunch of different vines, and you have to make 56 based on multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition. So in my specific case, I went to 8, then dropped to the multiplication symbol, and then got to 7, and that would have got me to 56. But some of them are really complicated, some of them are really weird. And my understanding is the speedrun community for this game is really wild. So if you haven't seen it, definitely give that a shot. Moving farther back, the next 4 I'm going to show all together. Making a mess. So, not only do we have Dragon Quest 1, not only do we have Dragon Quest 2. I'm showing these backwards. Why are these out of order? Okay, sorry. That was Dragon Quest 1. That was Dragon Quest 2. That was Dragon Quest 3. And that's Dragon Quest 4. So, Dragon Quest games came to North America as Dragon Warrior initially, before it kept its name as Dragon Quest. Dragon Warrior 1, not that expensive. Dragon Warrior 2, a little expensive, but Dragon Warrior 3 and 4 do get really expensive. So Dragon Quest is just a series of RPGs, a very popular series of RPGs, and I do have one friend who liked the Fire Emblem friend. I sent him a picture of these just to show him, and he was like, oh, cool. So, just kind of a neat thing. They were very cheap, so that's why I got them. I kind of found one seller that had a bunch of really cheap Famicom games and just said, let me load up. And so I did. Okay. Next one. I just mentioned the Fire Emblem friend, and so we have Fire Emblem Gaiden. Same deal as the Fire Emblem Super Famicom game. It was cheap, bought it, and this one's on Famicom just to help pad the Famicom collection a little bit. Next one is Mario Bros, the arcade Mario Bros. So not Super Mario Bros. You play on a platform with a bunch of turtles, or a bunch of Koopa, that just come out of pipes, and your goal is to hit them and knock them off and clear the level of turtles. So that's that. I have it on NES, and now I have it on Famicom in case I ever want to play it in Japanese. Not that arcade games really need dialogue, but nonetheless. Next one is Mickey Mousecapade on a cool white cartridge. Same thing, Disney games, and cheap, so kind of fit the perfect bill for things I would buy. Check the cheap checked the Famicom, checked the Disney, so perfect storm of a lot of different things. But Mickey Mousecapade did also come to the NES. Next one, I mentioned before, the Kunio-kun Dodgeball series, and if this looks familiar, it's because it's almost the exact same box as the original one. So, this is specifically Super Dodgeball. I think in Japanese it is Neketsu Koko Dodgeball, and it came to North America as Super Dodgeball. My first dodgeball game ever was Super Dodgeball on the NES, because when I first started collecting, I was like, ooh, dodgeball, let me give that a shot. And I actually had a lot of fun with Super Dodgeball on the NES. So when I found this one, just the pre-localized version, had to get it. So now I can play almost the same dodgeball game on 2 different systems. Okay, the next 2 are games that as soon as I show them, you're going to go, okay, he doesn't really need to explain why, but I will. First one is the original Super Mario Bros. So in North America, when we got the NES, we got Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt on the same cartridge, and here we just have Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Doesn't need an introduction whatsoever, but now I have the original home release of it, which is really, really cool. I'm still really bad at Super Mario Bros., but nonetheless, we're having fun. The next one is a Super Mario game that I have beaten, and we'll probably try and beat again sometime soon, because it's been a long time. It's Super Mario 3. So my dad and I played Super Mario 3 when I was growing up. I got a Game Boy Advance port of it, and he would show me all the tricks, because he played video games growing up. He knew all the tips and tricks to Super Mario 3, so even silly things like warps, silly things like hidden areas in the game, he would show me, and so some of those still stick with me today. And I need to play Super Mario 3 again, because I think I tried to play it not that long ago, and I kept getting stuck at one spot. And that's always like where my dad would have picked up the slack. But nonetheless, I'm really glad to have my, 2 of my favorite Super Mario games on their original releases. Last but not least, on the Famicom is Tetris, specifically the Bulletproof software release. And this is not good. It is not like the Tetris we got on the NES and Game Boy here in North America. The control scheme is bad. Instead of, when you play Tetris on the NES and Game Boy, the D-pad represents go left, go right, and go down. But in this one, and A-B allows you to rotate the tetromino that you're working with. But this version, the control scheme was, you do left and right just to change. Up and down don't do anything. But when you hit A, it force drops the item. So I was in for a severe culture shock when I was trying to play Tetris. I'm like, original Tetris release on Famicom, let's do it. And I was horribly stuffed because I did not know what was going on. I could not figure out what was wrong with the controls. It's not just me. They're just bad controls. But now I have Tetris. One game I missed that I was supposed to do before the Famicom was the original Game Boy. I have one original Game Boy game. It's Super Chinese Land 2. I've previously talked about Super Chinese, the series, and those videos in the summer, and even on the Instagram account. Basically, I think it's very funny that there's a video game series called Super Chinese Anything. There were 3 games released on the Famicom, 3 of them released on the Game Boy. I have Super Chinese Land 1, this is Super Chinese Land 2, and at some point I would like to get Super Chinese Land 3. I just think this title's funny. I think it's even funny that it's made by a Japanese developer. So, that's that. Technically, in chronological order, that's supposed to come before the Famicom, but hey, we're just having fun, right? So, that's the end of the chronological order, but I always, in a lot of those videos, I always left one of my favorite items for the very end. So everything I showed here today was a game or game adjacent, like the cards and the DVD. But the last thing I'm going to show that I got is not a game, but rather a game system. So, Switch, released a few years ago, and Switch Lite released shortly thereafterwards. And there have been a handful of special edition Switch and Switch Lites. In total, we've gotten 3 special edition Switches. We've gotten 3 special edition Pokemon Switches, I should say. We've got the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl Switch Lite that was released. I have that. We got the Scarlet and Violet Switch OLED, which I also got this year, which is really cool. And the last one, which was released first, but I didn't have, is the Sword and Shield Zacian and Zamazenta Switch Lite. And we've got it sometimes at the store. And I always pass on it every time because I'm like, I don't really need another Switch. But when I came across this one, I got a fantastic deal on it. It was way below market price. And I think it's even cooler that I have its Japanese release. It works just the same. I was saying that earlier that the Switch is not region locked, so I can play American games on a Japanese Switch. And so what I did was I got the Sword and Shield Switch Lite, which is awesome. This is definitely, of all these things that I got, there's a lot of stuff that I really, really like here too. But I think this has to be the coolest thing I've gotten in this past month. So it works beautifully. I played it. Works just fine. It's almost like brand new. The box is in really good shape too. So to now have all three Pokemon Switches is really neat. And I like the added layer that one of them is a Japanese version. So it didn't just come with that. It also came with a little Switch Lite pouch that I could have put the Switch Lite in. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the pouch because I don't really have a place for the pouch. But still really cool that I got the Switch Lite. So that's everything that I got in the month of May. And if you're still here, I really appreciate you watching, and I hope this was at least a little educational. I hope it was fun to listen to me ramble, and just thank you again for being here. So hopefully see you again soon for another video. Bye.